Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we are tackling those dreaded ring nerves. And I'm going to show you, I hope, I'm going to try to show you how to stop fighting them and start better understanding them so you can, I'm going to say almost befriend them, because here's the truth. They're not going away. Your nerves are never going away. And hopefully I'm going to show you that you don't really want them to go away altogether. But the thing I hear the most from handlers, just in general, is oh, sorry, I'm so nervous, or, I was just so nervous. I want to get over them. I want to never be nervous again. And, but also a lot of apologizing, especially at a trial, on a coaching call. No, I get we get honest, we get into it, it's fine. But when I'm at a trial, I'm overhearing, a lot of people apologizing for being nervous. And the truth is, every single person in that building is nervous. They're just on a different place of the continuum, right? Some of them are mildly nervous, just in terms of feeling a little bit of tingle, a little bit of excitement that comes with competing. And then some people are on the opposite end of the continuum, unfortunately throwing up in the bathroom or not able to eat for 3 days or just in a pure anxiety attack, okay? Obviously, we want to avoid that end as much as possible. And I talk a lot about energy and energy's role in getting us kind of to that Goldilocks, that not too nervous, not, too calm, but that just right. And every one of us has a different just right. All right. I've talked about the fact that I like the intensity of competing. I like to be if we were playing around with a 1 to 10 scale, I like to be at a 7 and 8. I like it. But some other people are my God, that sounds like pure hell. It's misery. Please no. All right. But I want everybody to first understand is it's never going away. It will change. And what will change the most is your management of it and your relationship with it, okay? But truthfully, I hope you're always a little nervous at least, because as we're going to talk about, the science shows that that nerves that we have when we're competing is necessary. It gets us hyper-focused. It sort of helps us get in the zone. It helps us lock out all of the other distractions. There's a lot of good reasons that we get nervous, okay? So I also want you to understand before we even get started is to be nervous is not a flaw. It does not mean anything, right? Stop telling the stories about what it means. It doesn't mean you are flawed. It doesn't mean you are unprepared. It doesn't mean that, they're negative or that because you are nervous, you will have a negative outcome. All right. They're also not negative. So I think too, people are there's this whole kind of, narrative that is, oh, I'm sorry, I'm nervous, because the rest of that sentence is because I know nerves are bad. I know it's bad to be nervous. And again, I don't think that's necessarily true. Sure, it's bad to be in a full-blown anxiety, right? Or just be so overdone that you can't think. There definitely is a sweet spot to this, but not all nerves are bad. And I just want you to starting today, stop apologizing for being nervous, okay? Because it's life, all right? And it's competition. It's just kind of where we are. All right. I think some of this apology habit, I'll call it, is, of course, society, peer pressure, the environment, Because there's this pressure for all of us to be always like calm, cool, and collected, right? And just to have it all together at all times. And that's not just in a competition environment. That's like in the grocery store, or, while you're learning or at class or in a lesson. And the truth is emotions are a big part of our lives and who we are and how we kind of present ourselves to the world and our personality. So our emotions are going to come through, right? So this pressure or this thing that we've adopted that we're always supposed to be like calm, cool, and collected and nothing bothers us and no nerves here is really made up. I don't know where it started. I'm not a historian in those kinds of things, so I'm not even going to guess. But I think that is a trap and a myth that we fall for. And we think then suddenly we have to live up to that, which is nuts. Like we do not have to live up to that at all. Okay. The other thing I think we've kind of adopted, or the narrative that we've all kind of secretly somewhere along the line agreed to, is that fear equals weakness. Okay. So, when we are nervous, especially when we are very nervous, we do trigger some physiological responses that are all the same responses that we have when we are afraid. Right? Because nerves are a type of fear. I'm afraid of what's going to happen. I'm nervous how this is going to go. What if, catastrophic thinking here, all of those things are fear-based. If we had full confidence or a perfect crystal ball that not only predicted lottery numbers, but knew exactly how our next run was going to go, we wouldn't be afraid. Because even if it was going to go badly, we'd know, right? We'd know the answer to that, right? Or we'd be out buying lottery tickets instead. Okay, so we've adopted or accepted that fear and nerves are weakness. Also, myth, busted, no more. The other thing I see people doing with this sort of apology tone is they're using it almost as like, I'm calling it pre-explaining, okay? They're like pre-explaining or putting out like this thing of like, in case this run goes badly, I've already told you I'm nervous, so that must be why, okay? It's like pre-explaining a run in case things go wrong. It's like putting out there ahead of time. We do that all the time with our dogs, right? I'm not, someone says, hey, good luck, have a great day, and you're like, well, I'm not really sure how today's going to go because Fifi doesn't like it here. Or we got up late and we were rushed. Or, we have all these pre-loaded, pre-excuses that we set out there before we even walk in the ring, maybe even before we tie on our shoes, that are like in case of emergency, right? And not emergency, I'm being dramatic, but in case things go wrong, I've already told you that there's these other extenuating circumstances that might cause us to not do our best today. And one could call it hedging our bets. Someone else would call it, just using it as a kind of a protective shield against the embarrassment or shame or, just like normal human emotions that will come from not having a great run, right? So the problem with all of this, obviously, is we are feeding the belief that being nervous is bad, and that being nervous always leads to a bad performance. Now, you might have had the experience that when you felt like you were in an anxiety mode, you had a bad performance, right? Many of you have been around this podcast long enough to have heard my story about giving myself a migraine because I was like so excited to run, which, remember, in the body feels a lot like nerves. Guess what? It wasn't my best performance. So if you are so nervous that, yes, you give yourself a migraine, then yeah, you're right. You probably have had the experience where feeling like that led to a poor performance. But that is data, right? That is past experience. We can shift that. And what I'm going to try to do is try to convince you that you have more control than you think and that it's okay to have some amount of nerves. And again, your Goldilocks, my Goldilocks, everything, that finding that perfect sweet spot are different. Okay. I'm okay being a little nervous. I think it gives me like a good kind of tingle, going into a competition, and I like it. The next person won't be so happy. So we each have to find our level of it, but I do believe wholeheartedly that it is possible. All right. So before I go into some fixes, some practical tools to work with, I want to first talk about some of what science and smart people and people who study this say about this, because this isn't just my opinion, but people study athletes a lot because they're always obsessed with like how they get that performance and how do you perform on a stage, how do you go out in front of a bunch of people, or how do you ski down that mountain, or how do you hit that mark from riding on a horse, all this crazy stuff. So people are obsessed with athletes. So a lot of research has been done on this, yes, with athletes, but in general. And science says that nerves really are adrenaline from the sympathetic nervous system. Now remember, you have a sympathetic nervous system, which is like the one that responds to stuff, and a parasympathetic nervous system, which is usually associated with being able to rest, recover, relax, that sort of thing, right? So what they're saying is like your adrenaline is that adrenaline from that sympathetic nervous system, meaning in reaction to the situation. Okay. So if you just start to take a step back and you're like, oh, nerves are just my adrenaline responding to this competition environment. Okay. Now I get it that for some of you, you're like, ugh, that won't fix it. But what I will tell you is when we start to understand where our nerves come from, what triggers them, and how they work in our body, we do start to, I wanted to say disassociate, but that's the wrong word. We do start to build some distance between ourselves and our thoughts, or ourselves and the nerves. And we can start to see and name things like, oh, I get it. That's my adrenaline. What I'm feeling, that feeling in my stomach, that dry mouth, that, spidey sense, or the headache even I'm giving myself, that's a result of the adrenaline, because my system is reacting to being in this environment. Okay. Some of the benefits, thank you science, are, sharper focus. Because again, even with fear, if you are running from the bear, you are not thinking about your grocery list. Okay. Right? You have a one-track mind in that moment. So the right amount of nerves, again, personal, but the right amount of nerves really does sharpen your focus and helps you get into that flow state where everything else falls away. You're not hearing people outside the ring. You're not even hearing maybe announcements or anything else. It's just you and your dog in the moment. What is time? Don't even know how long you're in the ring. And it's just that beautiful flow state. Okay. You have nerves in part to thank for that, because it really helps kind of jumpstart you into that sharper focus. Okay. Also, without nerves, a lot of times performances feel very flat, and can come across very flat. If you look at dogs and you watch dogs perform, the ones who are just kind of you can tell the ones that are going through the motions and wah, wah, wah. And the ones who are more fun to watch are the ones that have a little pep in their step, right? Or are enjoying what they're doing. So sometimes that nerves is that hyper focus and a little bit of a energetic, adrenaline, right? Science already told us what the answer is. And don't forget that nerves and excitement do feel the same in the body. So sometimes when you feel your stomach do the flippity flop, or you start to get a headache, or, some other, physical symptom, pause and ask yourself, am I nervous or am I excited? And by the way, most of the time, the answer is both. Because I'm often excited to be, actually almost always excited to be at a dog show, trial, test, competition of some sort. Because I like to do those kinds of things. So I'm almost always excited to be there. Rarely do you have to drag me to an event like that. So I'm always going to have some amount of excitement. Now, is it 60-40, 70-30, 50-50, 90-10? That's for you to figure out. But it is worthwhile to ask the question, because your body may be telling you one thing and you could misread it. And then think, oh my God, I'm nervous. I didn't think I was nervous. Well, maybe you weren't until you just said you were. Okay. All right. So think about that and think about just taking a beat to read the situation. Am I nervous? Am I excited? Could I be both? How can I get myself into a state where I am regulated? We talked about that the other week. And I'm in a good place to perform. All right? Because sometimes that mix, that feeling, if we misread excitement and think that it's nerves, we can get this thing where we're afraid or fearful rather of us getting nervous, right? Because, oh my God, that one time I gave myself a migraine. What if that happens again? Da, 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 da. So we feel this flutter in our stomach and all of a sudden we're catastrophizing and we're giving ourselves a migraine when that wasn't even what was happening. We were just kind of excited. Okay. So sometimes that fear of the fear, right? Or fear of the nerves coming again can really set us off and become a trigger in and of itself. Okay? All right. Well, I wouldn't say all this and not give you something to do about it. So right when we come back, we're going to talk about some tools that you can try this weekend. Struggling with ring nerves, inconsistency, or confidence? Let's fix that. With one-on-one coaching, we'll tackle your specific challenges and create a plan tailored to you, because your journey is unique and your mindset game should be too. My clients see breakthroughs every week. Are you next? Let's chat. Book a session now by heading to theqcoach.com. All right, back to it. Alrighty. So the first thing, we're going to go back to the top and I want you to build some awareness this week and reframe that you're not going to apologize for your nerves anymore. Okay. That ends today. That ends with the end of this podcast, with the sign off. Okay. We are not going to apologize for our nerves. They are part of the game. They are going to always be there in some way, shape, or form. It is on us to figure out how to regulate ourselves and get ourselves into a position where we know we can perform our best. But no longer are we going to apologize for our nerves. And we are not going to give pre-excuses that our nerves, or for that matter, anything else, might be the reason that I may or may not have the performance that I really wish I could have in the ring in a minute, right? Okay. We're not going to do that pre-explaining stuff anymore. Okay. Let's not do that. Nerves are not bad. Nerves are actually positive when you look at the science. So let's just, if you can't get to positive quite yet, which I totally understand, let's just agree that nerves are neutral until we see the performance that they come with. Okay. So you're going to start acknowledging them and just kind of recognizing it, that they're there, and that they are almost like just a cue. Like we think of handler cues all the time, like cueing our dogs, cueing ourselves. Well, when we start to feel that, it's just a cue that we care, that this matters to us, that this is important. And if we are in that position, we are afraid to be afraid, right? Or we are fearful of the nerves ratcheting up, then we know that that's our early warning, that we can step in and we can do something about it. Okay. Some of the other things you can do about it are to shift the interpretation of it, right? Instead of reading that feeling in your stomach or in your head or whatever as nerves and as negative, to start to think of them as excitement or as sharper focus or as energized or ready, or showing that you are fully present in the moment. Because probably making a grocery list doesn't make you nervous. So that means that you are fully present in the competitive environment, easy for me to say, and you are sharp and ready. Okay. That's a reframing. Again, you got to stop thinking of them as bad and start reframing them as at minimum useful. Okay. Of course, grounding tools like your breath work, your visualization, your mantras, as I say, probably every week, sorry, not sorry, but you've got to use these tools before you need them, because otherwise you'll be over in the corner thinking, having a full on, nerves into panic attack, and you'll be like, this breathing thing doesn't work, and yeah, I'll be like, yeah, probably right. Cause this is the first time you've tried it. It's not going to work for you. You have to know what tools work better for you. You have to know, is visualization your go-to? Or in this situation, when you start to feel nervous, do you need to reframe? Do you need to be distracted? Do you need to remove yourself from the environment? Do you need music? ask yourself, what is it you need right now? Because at the end of the day, nerves are also like kind of a vulnerable thing, right? We feel vulnerable in that moment because something could happen, right? Something bad could happen in the ring. Bad is in air quotes if you don't know me, because the ring is all just feedback. But you're starting to go there, right? So we want to make sure that we understand what works best for each one of us. For me, when I start to get nervous, I do like a distraction. I will look at my, feet and say, I wonder when I got these shoes. Did I get them on sale? Did I have a Zappos, gift card with these? How did this, whatever, to distract myself, get myself thinking again, get myself in a better mindset. Music for me is a big go-to, helps me reset, get out of the noise of the environment and into my music and create kind of an earworm for myself. So understand what it is that you need and create that environment for you and build it into your rituals ahead of time. Those rituals, those crate to gate, whatever you're calling it, build it in so that you have a moment of regulation before you walk into the ring. Don't wait until you're 5 dogs out to address this. Figure out how it can factor into your rituals if this is something that you are actively working on overcoming, right? If this is a problem week in and week out for you, not just at special events, then yeah, you need to be working this into your rituals so that you make regulation and finding that sweet spot of like just the right amount of nervous feel really accessible for you, okay? The next one, practice being nervous. I know that sounds super counterintuitive and opposite of everything I just said, but whether you're in class or in a lesson or, you're practicing at home, a lot of times what we do is when we go to practice, again, class, lesson, backyard, whatever, we know that if we make a mistake, we'll just redo it. So have a run through where you don't get to redo it, Now, if you're training things, keep this in mind, balance this with your training needs. Okay. So I realize that, if you're working on something with your dog, if they make a mistake and you need to fix it, okay, it's not all the time, but for sure, make yourself finish. Don't give yourself the out of being able to fix it, just like in the ring, because you have to start to feel what that feels like. Otherwise, your practice environment and your ring environment will be so different that this is just another way that your ring environment is different. Oh my God, I don't get to redo anything. Oh my God, I don't get to fix anything. Oh my God, what if I make a mistake? Whereas at home, you fix it, right? And again, balance that with some of your training goals, because I know that runs counterintuitive to if you're working on some things, okay? But you need to feel pressure other than in the ring. Otherwise, it is so foreign that yes, it is jarring to your system. And then finally, reflection, debrief with yourself, write it down, get out the journal, get out the planner, make a couple notes. You don't have to write War and Peace on it. Or if you do want to write War and Peace and you want to just like angry journal or get all the emotions out or get it all out of you, then do that, okay? Do what you need in order to process. But really what I want you to do with the tracking is I want you to track the patterns. Was there something that set you off? Was there a trigger? Was there something your dog did? Or, you thought everything was calm, cool, and collected, and then, between the gate or your crate and the gate, something weird happened and both of you kind of spun out, right? Write it down. Keep track. You're not going to notice trends unless you write them down. All right? All right. So in closing, nerves are not going anywhere. So what we need to do is get better at using them to our advantage, understanding how they affect us and how we want to manage them. But they can be looked at as positive, if I don't feel at least a little nervous, I know I'm not on my game. Right? There's a little bit of something I have to feel. Otherwise, like I'm too casual, I'll be sloppy with my handling. There is a little bit of that. So figure out what is your preferred dial. How do you want to dial that in? and look at your nerves as at least neutral if you can't see them as that turning on of your, mental capacity and turning on of the game and getting into a flow state. If you can't get there yet, which I totally understand, at least stop seeing them as bad and just see them as neutral. Okay, that's your first step. Okay, again, we're not apologizing anymore for them, and nor are we using them as pre-excuses for anything. And we're going to start tracking, and we're going to start noticing what we do for ourselves around this topic. Okay, if you are someone, for instance, who is always really nervous, my next question would be, like, if we were doing a coaching call, I'd be like, okay, well, tell me about your rituals. Tell me about like how you're preparing. What are you doing for your nerves, like in your preparation? And I, a lot of times, get blank stares. Okay. So make sure that you are actively working on this. Treat it like a skill. Treat it like this is something you want to master. Invest the time into getting good at understanding your nerves and understanding how to dial in your energy, get to like a really good flow state, and use your nerves to focus you, not derail you. All right. So nerves aren't bad. They do not mean you are not ready. They just mean that you are in the game and that you care a whole lot about what happens. And that is really good. Okay? So whatever you're up to this week, I hope you have a fantastic week with your dogs. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.